Good afternoon, and welcome to Leading Through Today's Talent Crunch Techniques for Attracting and Retaining Top Teammates, a Health System CIO production. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name's Anthony Guerra. I'm the founder and editor in chief of Health System CIO, and I'll be your moderator. We're looking forward to your participation. You can send in your questions or comments at any time in the Q&A box, and we'll take them later in the program. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, first we're going to go about 35 to 40 minutes with our main panel discussion featuring Michael Carr, CIO at Health First, Steve Stanic, CIO at Lake Charles Memorial Health System, and Brian Sterud, VP and CIO at Faith Regional Health Services. And then we'll have our Q&A. So let's jump right in. Very timely and important topic and lots to talk about. So Michael, let's start with you. Can you give us an overview of your organization and your role?
Sure. Yeah, our organization Health First, we're on the Space Coast of Florida, so think Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach. We're an integrated delivery network. We've got 4 hospitals, about a 500 provider medical group, and then a health plan with a little over 100,000 lives. So my role as CIO, I have accountability for all technology, cyber security, as well as data and analytics for the organization.
All right, very good, Michael. Thank you. Steve?
Steve Stanic, I'm the CIO of Lake Charles Memorial Health System, located in Lake Charles, Louisiana. 3 hospital system. We have a behavioral health system, large tertiary campus, and then a women's hospital. Really, if you go between Baton Rouge and Houston, we're the largest healthcare provider in Southwest Louisiana, but you don't hit much between the two of them. And I have responsibility for all the technology, biomed, analytics, cybersecurity. Pretty much like everybody else, a standard CIO role.
All right, very good, Steve. Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, hello, I'm Brian Sterud, Chief Information Officer at Faith Regional Health Services, located in Norfolk, Nebraska. So we're in Northeast Nebraska, very rural area, 1 hospital, and then multi-specialty physician practice of about 80 providers, some of them scattered around Northeast Nebraska and primary care clinics. The rest are on our main campus. Similar to the other gentleman, I have responsibility for all technology here. I have biomedical reports to me, and then I am the Chief Information Security Officer as well, so hold that title as well. So happy to be here.
All right, very good, Brian. Thank you. All right, let's jump right into it. How would you describe the current state of the healthcare IT labor market, and what are the most significant shifts you've seen in the past year or so? Michael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, as we focus specifically on IT and technology, I think what I would say is with a lot of large organizations laying people off, I think from a lot of the C-suite and a lot of our peers think, well, hey, there's a lot of talent out there. And I think one of the challenges is there's a mismatch where a lot of those people have skills or interests that may not align with what we need at the health system. So it's a very tight market. We're a regional health system. We're about an hour from Orlando, so we compete with both the Orlando market, and there's a large DoD and aerospace infrastructure here. So I would say it's very tight, and I would say in the past 12 to 18 months, I think we're seeing a lot more applicants for roles, but I wouldn't say necessarily we're seeing higher quality applicants, just a larger number of people where we would get 5 or 7 people applying, we're getting 15 to 30 depending on the role. So a lot more applicants, but I think a lot less targeted in terms of what people are applying for.
Michael, just as a follow-up, you mentioned that there's a mismatch in terms of what you need. I mean, can you give me any more detail at a high level of what the
Sure.
things are
Yeah,
that you're looking for?
so you take a company like Microsoft or Amazon or another that's laying off engineers or developers. We do very little development. We're mostly an integrator, right? We do have technical teams and roles, but a lot of times those people in those skill sets are coming from a for-profit. They have much higher salary expectations, and their skill set is really focused around the development side,
Uh,
software development, like I said. And so could they work in an organization? Absolutely, but A, they don't really want to do that type of work, and 2, there's a salary mismatch as well.
but they're still applying? You're still getting
We
applications from
see
these
we see
folks?
some, but usually what happens is they kind of shake out through the process because their
Yeah.
salary. We'll see candidates who are highly qualified, and then when HR has that conversation, they want a very very high end of the pay range, and it excludes a lot of them from moving forward in the process because we can't meet their salary expectations.
All right, very good. Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Michael. I think that it's tight to the skill set. So for instance, we're an Epic shop and it's hard to find Epic certified folks. We compete a lot with the plants and the refineries here. So if you get IT folks out of there, I really agree with Michael saying is their salary expectations up here as opposed to the for-profit side. So you have to adopt a lot of grow your own, but I think I think that's the biggest thing. Tight to skill, lot of development type talent applying, but in healthcare, we traditionally don't do development. We're buying applications from a vendor going from the support. So I would agree with that context. I agree with what Mike said.
Yeah, we'll go into that a little bit more, I think, in a little bit, this grow your own idea as a way to deal with some of these challenges. So that's very interesting. But Brian, what are your thoughts?
To kind of just reiterate everything they said, and also I would say, because of, and I know lots of people see things in the news about people bringing remote staff back in-house, and I know that can happen some places, but there still will always be a place for remote work in IT. I don't think it'll go away. And because of that, and I'm a very rural area as well, obviously, and we compete nationally now. And I think that's the toughest part, is that somebody can live here and work anywhere, probably more so than they ever could at any time in history. So it makes it a national market.
Yeah, let's go into that a little bit, and we'll follow up with you, Brian. This idea of remote work. We think of this often as a satisfier, something people want. And I know plenty of people that are being forced to go back into the office now almost 5 days a week, and nobody seems to want to. At best, people want to mix. So, do you think that the work that you're having people do requires more of an in-person presence where you can't play that card as much as you might otherwise? Because if it is a satisfier, if it can offset a lower salary and you can't use it, that's unfortunate, right? You can't use it as a card. Do you need more in-person presence than some other companies?
I think theoretically, I think we're kind of in a hybrid format, and I think, and maybe we'll touch on that later too. But when you think about trying to create a culture, and when you think about trying to um, create or instill a passion for healthcare, it's really hard to do that if you're not in person some of the time, at least. And I think that's why people are in healthcare, as the other folks have said here. If you're looking for the highest salary, it's probably not in healthcare. So
Uh,
to be in healthcare is to be connected and passionate with it. So I do think there needs to be some component of in person, at least until you can build enough of a relationship to go remote. So for us, there's some other things that restrict us from doing that, some state regulations and other sorts of things. So we don't have, we will do fully remote if you're in the state of Nebraska and if you reach a certain level within our IT organization. And so in order to achieve that level, that means that we've established some of the things culturally that we're talking about. So it's kind of an answer all over the place for you, but we're
yeah, that's
mostly
all right.
hybrid.
That's all right. One more quick follow-up there. If you're hired, and I want to go around the horn with this, are there some security issues with hiring fully remote? Meaning, I have to meet you at some point. Like, we have to physically meet, even if you're going to be fully remote, because there's some impersonations going on out there where I think people are hiring candidates that aren't even real. Is that part of something you deal with if you're hiring for fully remote, Brian?
Yeah, for us, we would, like I said, the only thing that we would do that's fully remote is within the state of Nebraska, and we wouldn't get through the hiring process without having you come on site. So
Yeah,
it's not maybe something that we've done on purpose due to the security concerns, but it's definitely part of our protocol.
yeah. All right, Michael, your thoughts on what we're hearing?
Yeah, I agree with Brian that the hybrid versus in person. We started our Epic project March of last year, and we required the team to be on site 5 days a week throughout the implementation. And if some people opted out, didn't want to be part of the project because of that, but we felt strongly enough building a new team, new culture, learning a new platform. Really hard to do it virtually. And so I think what people would say is yes, they want the flexibility, and there was real benefits to them being there, building that camaraderie, knowing who their partners are and what they're working on. And so as a talent side, we have very few fully remote positions in IT. I think we have a few, but most of ours are hybrid and mixed. And we're setting standards for people to come back in the office. And for us, it's a lot of people want to be fully remote, and that's another thing that kind of weeds people out. But I think to Brian's point, one, that connection to the mission, to know and understand our business. And here's what we always tell our team is, our nurses, our physicians, those people who are caring for patients, they don't, that's a flexibility benefit they don't have. And so sometimes you need to go where the work is, and it can't be on your schedule. It has to be on the customer schedule.
Yep, very good, Steve.
Michael, the last thing Michael said really kind of resonates. It's really hard to support folks like physicians and nurses that have to be here to care for our patients when you're remote. So we don't have any what I would term fully remote positions. Maybe a couple in the billing. Obviously, coding could always be fully remote. They have to onboard here. Everybody has to kind of come in the visit. Then we have quarterly IT staff meetings where we bring everybody in. But hybrid is something you've got to live with. Today, we want to give our folks the flexibility to do that. It's hard to compete when the people you're hiring, they have counterparts that are working fully remote. One of the things we do with remote, and this is the number one key, is that if you want to go remote or hybrid, availability is the key. You have to be available during those business hours. The only time we run into trouble is when we're trying to find folks that are supposed to be remote or on a hybrid day, and we can't find them. So they kind of that's a good way to lose your hybrid or remote privileges. We kind of bring you back in then.
Yeah, one shot, or we do a 3 shots, you're out, Steve. I mean, how tough are we on that?
I don't have a hard and fast rule on that. Everybody gets one, I guess one or two, but if it becomes a pattern,
Yeah.
I'm always trying to get a hold of John Doe and he's never available. That's good where you kind of run into that.
Yeah.
We don't do anything like monitoring them, make them stay on teams or monitoring their keystrokes or anything like that. So, but I will tell you, it has, the flip side, I'm talking about the thing, it has worked well for us.
Well, you know what? It makes me think like we have to make concessions in order to, and we have to make as many concessions as necessary to fill the role, right? There's roles that need to be filled. There's functions that need to be done. So, what are our levers, right? If we can only pay a certain amount, and then okay, we can play with the remote thing. We'd love to have them in as much as possible, but if we require it 5 days a week, you're simply sitting there saying, I can't fill this role as it's currently constructed, and we're going to go into that a little more. But right, you have to show enough flexibility to meet the market to fill the role. Because if not filling the role is not acceptable, then we have to do something to fill the role. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And kind of an example is that Michael says it indicate he's going through an Epic implementation. We've been live on Epic for about 8 months now, and our folks that worked on Epic, we were like it. We wanted them here, but we had to get some gap fillers from time to time. When you're doing a little bit of build, you have to get a few contractors in to work with your folks. Those folks were totally remote. We never saw them, and they were probably working on 3 or 4 different Epic projects at the same time. So, but that role, they're not tied to the culture or tied to the system, so they could do that. It's a little bit different here. We wanted our analysts to build a relationship with the folks that they supported, and a lot of that you can't just do on a Teams or a Zoom call. It's really, kind of face to face to knowing the areas you're going to support.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in? Brian, anything else you want to add there?
No, I agree. I agree with everything Steve said.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing on that. The other thing that we've talked to people, and it's not about can the work be done remote or not. That's not really the core issue for us. It's about part of the role for senior analysts and engineers is mentoring and helping their peers, and part of it for new engineers or analysts is learning not just their role but other roles in networking. And that's the piece we've said to people is and I don't have the data, and this is one of those I'd really love our HR others to do a study is the development of the growth and maturation of those people who've been in person or remote, especially for new hires or people fresh out of school. If all you know is behind the keyboard and that's your whole experience, it's really hard to develop those relationships, those soft skills, understand the business, and grow and evolve. And that to me is as important as the what work needs to be done, where it's those non-tangibles that are critical in terms of growth and development. And we talk about how do we want people to grow. Well, that's our commitment. If you do that, we're going to invest in you. You're going to have these opportunities. If you're fully remote, you can do that work for anybody.
Michael,
Yeah.
I agree with you there. I'm sorry to jump in, Anthony,
No,
but
go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
really, I think that's an excellent point. You need to build almost like a customer relationship with your folks, understand their business, their workflows, and it's hard to do. It's hard to do remote. So I think it was a good point, Michael.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. I want to discuss it a little further. And I think it came into my head if I was giving one of my children advice as they were going into the workforce. The idea comes to my head that just because you may be able to get something as an employee or can get it, some sort of hybrid or whatnot, might not be really what you want to get. Right? I mean, you talked about it, and these things may be sort of soft and unspoken, but it's just foolish to think that if you're largely remote or fully remote, you're going to have the same career path as somebody who's on site every day and getting to meet because we assume the upper echelon executives like yourselves are there. And if we're someone who wants to make a career out of this, wants to move up, and you got to be there. You're going to be there, right? I mean, you're going to have more of a relationship with folks that you see every day as executives than folks that you see once a week, and maybe your paths don't even cross sometimes because you're out the one day they're in. So as career advice, we would think it would be smart to be present more than not, and that's one of those expressions, right? Half of life is just showing up, right? That's an expression. So let's show up, kids. Michael, any more thoughts on that?
No, it's nothing else to add on that.
Steve?
I mean, I agree. It's the old adage. If you're where the action is, then you're known, and it's a lot of it's exposure, just plain
Yeah,
exposure. It's
yeah,
being exposed to the leaders of the organization.
yeah, yeah. No one's gonna ask you to come with them to lunch if you're at home,
That's right.
right? You know,
Right.
so
Or let's have a cup of coffee or whatever.
right, right. Or come in here and let me brainstorm with you. I want to throw something off you. I mean, so yeah. It's not going to be the same experience. We talked about this, but let's cover because this is your best card in healthcare, right? This is your ace in the hole. This is what's going to get you tied to the people who will compromise on salary because you have to, so that the money's may not be there. Um, so you want to make this a big part of not just your recruiting, but also a continual part of their experience. So not that they came in and were excited to be a part of healthcare and made some compromises, and then all of a sudden somehow you've got them in the basement or remote, and all of a sudden they don't feel connected to healthcare, right? So you gotta pitch it. It's got to be part of the advertisement for the role, and then it actually has to come to fruition for them to feel that satisfaction. So you retain them. Brian, let me start with you. Your thoughts on um, leveraging, and I don't mean that in a negative, manipulating way, just leveraging the where you work and the deep meaning of what you guys do in order to, make that be an attractive point to prospective employees.
It's critically important. I have one more comment on the previous question,
Yes,
which
please.
was it's funny that you brought up career path and remote. There have been articles written recently that showed that 100% remote employees had been passed over and that didn't have advancement opportunities. So I wish I could cite that for you and tell you where it came from. But I've seen articles recently that have started to study that. So I think, again, to put a bow on that one,
Yeah.
if you're giving advice to somebody, the answer really is there's lots of people that want to do a certain job and maybe they just want to do that forever, and that's fine. Maybe remote's great, but if you have aspirations of moving up, there probably needs to be something else that's hybrid at least. Back to the mission driven. So this is critically important. As I talked about before, I think you can't compete with salaries at other places. You can't compete, frankly, with the demands that 24/7 when things need to be operating all the time. Healthcare is not easy, and there's lots, I won't name industries, but there's lots others that are way easier. So if you can't do this, if you can't tie the mission driven part of it, those people are going to turn over and you're just going to be hiring someone else. And so obviously having people that already have exposure to healthcare and understand the grind and understand the passion for it, that's awesome. And if they don't, some of the things that we do, and I have a director who's really great at doing this. She's very good at tying, especially when it's something difficult. Hey, it's really important that we do this upgrade at 2 a.m. because this is a critical system, and that's the time that affects patients the least. She always brings it back to we're doing this because of the patient, and trying to connect that culture with them. And then the other one is just they have to have a passion for healthcare and a tie to it. And I think the other thing that she does that really well is we've started to bring in leaders to staff meetings. So she had the director of our sleep lab come in and talk about the things that we do in the sleep lab and how important they are to patients. We had our cath lab director come in and talk about what that does. So then we can tie all of our team to say, hey, that system that you support, this is what allows these people to do these things, and they can tie it all together. So I think that's been a good move for us and taking us in the right direction.
That's really cool. I just wrote down the word reverse rounding because,
Yeah.
when I think of rounding, I think of the IT folks going out and sort of going out into the wild, so to speak, of patient care. But this individual you mentioned is doing kind of a reverse thing, bringing almost guest hosts to IT. It sounds like bringing them to you to talk
Yeah.
to your team about, so that's interesting. It's another way to do it.
It's easier. I will tell you, years ago, we did do kind of the walk a day in their shoes,
Yeah.
where we required each person to do a day or half day in another department, just fly on the wall, observing. And it was super beneficial. They always uncovered something they could solve technology wise. They'd say, well, I spent a half a day in OB and they're using this spreadsheet to do this thing. And they would always find something. We didn't require it at all. We said, you don't need to uncover anything, just observe. But they always came back with solutions that made that department or wherever they observed more efficient. But it just became really hard for us to do that in terms of getting people out. And our project load is, I'm sure Steve and Michael will agree with, we have way more projects than we have time to do them. So that became hard to do. So this reverse rounding, I like the way you say it, has just been a little bit easier for us to manage.
I just came up with something cool, guys. Reverse rounding. Well, I got it from Brian here, but maybe I get coined the term. I love that. Steve, what are your thoughts?
We do a lot of the same things Brian does. I think that one of the things that we stress from your orientation on, and even through the interview process, is that healthcare is a mission. When you look at it, I mean that's what it is. So you have to be dedicated. And this isn't a plant job where you're just going to work for somebody you never see. So we do that. We make sure that I bring leaders in from time to time, but we also do a neat thing like, and we just did this with Epic. We just got our perfusion, our heart-lung machines to talk to Epic through Capsule. And so we made sure that we did a little presentation of that for our team meetings to say, hey, look, this is something that you all did that makes an impact daily with the information we're collecting. So that really helps us. It's kind of a light bulb deal when you come on. They say, look, I see this, I see where I'm making a difference and where what I'm doing is actually touching the patient. So the more times you could show what you do in IT to providing care, touching the patient, the better off that really helps them. So that's kind of the things that we do.
Yeah, Steve, it's just it's not to go into a tangent, but this idea that you can't just do the work. You have to market it, right?
Yeah.
You have to market it. You have to let people know what you've done. And that because you don't want people going, all that money we spend on IT, what are they doing over there? Right? So not just as a CIO, it's not just doing the work, but it's marketing the results. And that's okay. That's not a dirty thing to do.
I think along those lines too, I think one of the things I forgot to mention, and Brian, I know this is for our business uh, intelligence folks, the ones that do a lot of the reporting, a lot of the dashboards and that, we make sure that they're doing their work in the department, so they're understanding the flow, they're there to available to meet the people. And I think a lot of times they see that, they see the difference that they're making. So that's another way. I think the more you could embed them or show them, the better off you are.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, under our chief nurse exec, we started a safety and reliability journey. And originally people talk about safety, but it's really safety and reliability. And so what we've worked on really is to tie in the work that we've been doing for years around, reliable systems and availability and, reducing major incidents and that kind of stuff. So we have a daily huddle for IT, and then that feeds into the divisional huddles, which feeds into an organizational huddle. And so I think having that flow up and down, we require our leaders to rotate through, attend all the different operating huddles. So I think them understanding that our work is part of our reliability, our safety journey is if we're not reliable, that puts our patients and our clinicians at risk. And so they've understood it natively, but now they see it and they understand, hey, this machine has been down, or hey, this system isn't working as expected. So being more present, not just our informaticists and the clinical leaders, but those maybe more back end technical folks who don't get out in the field as much. So I think them being part of the huddles, sharing what we're working on in IT, what not just the issues, but what's working well, and then bringing that back. They have an obligation to share that information back to our teams, and so it really connects them more deeply to how our work impacts our clinicians out in the field.
Excellent. All right, let's go back to this idea of homegrown as one of the solutions, and we hear about this in sports a lot, right? In baseball, especially a homegrown talent versus trading for a free agent, which is quite expensive, especially if you're trying to get Juan Soto. If you've gotten Juan Soto, the Met, what'd they pay for him? 900 million, something like
Yeah.
that. A lot of money. So homegrown is good. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you do that. Some nuances in there. Obviously, clinicians are great. Clinicians who are interested in IT are great. Super users. But we don't want to be poachers, right? You got to be very sensitive. I don't want to be grabbing people off the floor and then maybe getting some resentment. So, what's the way to do this, Brian? Let's start with you. Your thoughts on, is this a strategy of yours, both internally on your team to grow the people you have into those higher level director and beyond positions, and also perhaps to get maybe the nurse who is about to retire or just had enough or is burned out and was always good in IT, and maybe you want to come over here. I don't know how those conversations go, but your thoughts. It's been said that getting someone who certainly knows the organization, but at the very least knows healthcare, you've gotten over a few hurdles uh, that rather than someone who may come in and be shell shocked and then leave. But your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, on the clinical side, we've had good luck. Just we typically have relationships with a lot of folks in the organization, and we've been able to, when we had openings, we actually just had somebody return to us recently that went back to direct patient care and is now returning back to IT. We've had really good success though that way. The most intentional things that we're doing as far as growing our own, and I love the baseball analogy, so I'll run with that a little bit because I'm a Twins fan. And where we run into, so I'll talk about the strategies and I'll come back to the Twins thing. So a couple things that we've done is we've had difficulty recruiting recently. A lot of our sort of more infrastructure level positions, security analyst positions. And so one of the things that we've done was a lot of times people come in the door in our field support positions and eventually work their way up, but it usually takes a little bit of time. So one thing we've done to try to expedite that a little bit, if created a kind of an in-between position between that field support and our infrastructure analysts, and allowed that those folks, a couple key individuals, to move up and do kind of junior level stuff. And that allows us to then, when there becomes an opportunity, hopefully those people have demonstrated success, and then we have a kind of a pipeline to build it that way. The other thing we've done going further up that I've talked about in a couple other venues is working with our local four-year institution. Years ago, they asked our IT leaders in our community what we wanted, and we were pretty specific about we want kids to graduate, and we want them to have experience. And so they actually listened to us. If they get involved in Wayne State College is the name of the school. If they get enrolled into the program, because it's not all IT folks, it's only those within the IT department that apply and are accepted. They actually do their curriculum in 3 years, expedited in 3 years. And then their fourth year, Wayne is about 35 miles away from us or so. Their fourth year, that school has actually built an apartment building in the town I'm in, Norfolk. And they actually live in Norfolk, and then they work in Norfolk. So they have, I think it's like 32 hours a week that they work through these internships. So we just hired, as you might imagine, it takes 4 years to kind of get through a cohort. And so we just hired one of our first graduates who was here as an intern, and now we hired him as a full-time employee. So love those things that we're doing. I'll tie it back to the twins. This is the problem that I have with them. If you follow the twins historically, oftentimes when somebody becomes big, they're gone, right? So now they grew their own. They came up through the farm system. The Twins invested in them, and they hit that first free agent contract, and the Yankees pay them, or the Mets pay them, or the Dodgers pay them. And so that's what we're trying to work through now too. Those kinds of things have been happening so we want to grow our own. We also understand that we have to then compete nationally because, a lot of times we get somebody who becomes really good and then they end up somewhere else.
Yeah, it's grow your own and retain, right? Grow and
Yes.
retain. That's what we got to figure out. But so it's a problem that isn't solved, right? You're saying it's something we still got to figure out.
We're constantly working on it. We're constantly looking for ways to retain and to do those things. So, yeah.
Right. All right. Very good. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll start with the kind of losing people. I don't know, boss used to always say grow and go. And so one of the things we try to do is when people take really good opportunities outside of the organization, we try to highlight that. We don't want them to leave, but we want people to know we're proud of people. We're happy for them. You get somebody who gets just this killer offer, like, I'm not going to hold a grudge. I mean, I feel like we have a small part in their success of helping them grow, but we want to highlight that. We don't want people to feel guilty or hey, I can't talk about it, right? We want people to stay, but when they get those opportunities, we want to talk about it and share that as a success story. And much like Brian, we bring a lot of people, a lot of our entry-level engineers and analysts as field service technicians, right? And a lot of them have degrees and other experience, but I always tell people is if you want to grow in an organization, start where you can, not where you want to be. Because if you wait for the perfect role and you say that's not what I want to do, you don't get that opportunity to get in, and maybe it's not doing the work or at the pay scale you want. But if you've got no experience, starting out as a field service tech is a great way. One, you're going to learn customer service skills. Two, you're going to understand the business. Three, you're going to get to know people in and outside of IT. And if you do well, we have a lot of our analysts, engineers, and others that grow up, and we're constantly refreshing that team, and it's a feeder bed. And so it's our feeder system back to the rest of the organization. And the manager who's put that in place has a dynamic training program. So we look at that as kind of sticking with the baseball analogy. When I first got here, we were trying to hire a lot of senior level, expert level engineers, and what we found is it rarely worked out. When we got them, they stayed for a little bit of time, but the downside too is sometimes when you bring people at the top, they're not growing from where they are. They're at the peak. And so we want to catch people on the upside. Not to say that some of those senior people can't still grow, but a lot of them, you're paying them for what they have done, not what they will do. And so we've kind of dialed that back a bit. We rely on some consultants sometimes when we need expert level talent in areas where we don't have it. But we decided we're not gonna stretch ourselves and make an offer to somebody at a principal level who doesn't have that skill set. We're just if they get there, great, but we've got to follow our process, follow our tiering, and fill in the holes with consultants where we have to.
Yeah, we don't want any bad free agent signings, right?
There you
Pay a
go.
fortune and all of a sudden they can't hit. Steve,
Yeah.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
I agree with both Michael and Brian. In fact, I love the baseball analogy because I've always said the help desk and the field service techs they're like your farm team. So that's where you're bringing it. That's where you're bringing in your future talent. And I can tell you, we've been pretty successful moving them up. I was just thinking about it as we were discussing this, is that my whole cybersecurity team, including their manager, most of my systems analysts, my access team, they've all come from the help desk or desk side support. They've been here, and I think that I really agree with what Michael says is if you get folks that leave, they're going to get a better offer. The last thing you could do is get into this whole beat my role methodology and try to beat the offer. If they decided they're going to go, they're going to go. And celebrate that to the new folks coming in and the folks that are in the roles that are trying to move up to say, look, here's John Smith. He just took a job over at XYZ Corporation, great offer. He's moved on, but he got some great experience here. We've educated him. If certification was appropriate, we got him certified. Then I think as a CIO, your role is to make sure that the next wave of folks coming up through the farm system can fill into that role and do that. So, you retain where you can. You're not going to win every battle. You hope you do it, but you need to spend a lot of time. So I spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that the folks we're hiring for those entry level roles are not only appropriate for that role, but I'm always looking as how are they going to fit in the future? Do we have a future security analyst? Do we have a future, Epic Cajito analyst here? Do we have so you have to keep looking at, so that's why I always say you got to pay attention to the entry level.
Steve, I think that's brilliant, and I want to just dwell on that for a minute. I guess someone could think as a leader that, listen, I'm going to get involved in the higher level hirings. Those are the people that will ultimately report to me or some sort of upper echelon, and the other ones I won't worry about. But to your point, I mean, and I've always said that it seems to me that if you're looking where you should spend your time, spending it to make sure you have the right hires is a good place to spend your time because it takes care of so many problems, right? If you get, and this is the Jim Collins stuff, get the right people on the bus,
Yep.
and you have so much less to worry about. So it's a place to spend time. But your point is excellent, which is those are really worthy places to spend your time. Those entry level positions, especially if you feel like you've got a sense or you want or what you're looking for from that junior person, like if I see A, B, and C, this is someone who I think will grow. And if I see D, E, and F, that's someone who gives me some red flags. Do you have certain things in your head, Steve, that you're looking for with those junior people?
I'm just looking for energy and passion. I'm looking for somebody that's showing a willingness to learn. And I'll be honest with you, age has nothing to do with it. We have a lot of folks that are switching careers that don't mind starting out at the bottom. So, and a lot of it is, I make it a point that no matter who we're hiring, I don't have to be in on the whole interview. You don't want to overrule the manager, and you want to let your management team do what they need to do. But just give me 5 minutes to talk to them.
Uh-huh.
Just see if they're a good fit. That's what I'm looking for.
And sometimes you have a little disagreement. Not that you have an argument, but sometimes you'll speak to the manager and they'll have a different take than you'll have. And I guess you try and have a productive exchange there.
Anthony, I'll take it a step further. If I'm doing my job right at the management level and my
Yeah.
direct report team, then we're not going to have any disagreement. I'm going to be really validating. I'm going
Yeah.
to be telling them this is a great fit. This is a great future here.
That's good stuff. Michael, anything else there?
No, I like Steve's point around that looking for talent when they come in, and I think when you look at people fresh out of school always ask like, hey, how do I make my resume stand out and that kind of stuff, and I do think it's hard. Looking at a resume, being able to tell, is somebody a self-starter? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to do work maybe that other people aren't willing or don't want to do? And so I think that's where the interview process is really, really important.
Yeah.
And you got to be looking for those probing questions to say, is that person going to fit the culture? Are they willing to? Are they going to be willing to learn? Are they going to put in a little extra effort,
Yeah.
or expect you to spoon feed them? And so I think that's where I don't have good advice for how candidates do that. A lot of them ask me, but if you get an interview, you got to show people. That's what I was telling them. You got to show people that you're hungry, you want to learn, you're going to grow, and you're not going to have to be handheld.
Well, Brian, let me take it over to you. I mean, and I think Steve's right on with energy and passion. I would add one, and I'd like your thoughts on these elements, and that would be preparation. I guess you could have energy and passion, but not really be able to show that you prepared for this particular interview. That would always be my advice to anyone who's applying for a role or going for an interview is research the organization, research the individuals you're going to speak with, know their LinkedIn profile, know where they went to school, look for points of commonality that you could say, oh, I saw you did this, or oh, I noticed you did that. Show you spent some time thinking about this job and me. And if you could do that and with energy and passion, now we're onto something here. And what are your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, that's right along the same lines as that I was thinking. My leaders hear me say all the time is that we can't we can teach you skills, we can't teach you personality. So I would, it's a big deal to me when, and it can be, and I'll just say it. I don't, IT is not known for having great personalities at times. So, um, and that can vary. And there's a lot of folks that kind of have that classic, IT sort of nerdy, personality and are extremely successful. It just depends on where they're at.
Yeah.
But the point that I make as far as especially as it relates to entry level position, they don't the customer doesn't know how long it should have taken to fix that problem on your computer. But if you have a little bit of bedside manner, so to speak, and have some conversation and you get to know them a little bit, they don't know that it took you twice as long. Now, but we've definitely had people that were the smartest person in the room that fixed it the fastest, but are so dry and so, impersonable that that experience is far, far worse. And so we attempt to hire for personality, hire for aptitude. So I just want to know that you can learn. I don't have to necessarily know that you did, so to speak. And so we can teach you the skills that you need and lean on the personality and customer service.
So, Brian, we need a term for like bedside manner, but for an IT tech helping someone at their computer. I couldn't come up with anything good right away, but that could be the next thing we have to work on.
I'm sure you'll come up with something.
Yeah. That's another interesting point. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, Steve, not all positions in IT require the same skill set. There could be some sort of more in the basement, so to speak, in the background, um, where you're not so worried about the person's personality. You don't picture them having to speak with a physician. I don't know if you bifurcate in that way, or you want everybody able to interact with a high-level user, or there's some technical infrastructure network stuff where you're like, I don't care, this is complicated, and you're really good at it, so you're not going to have to talk to Dr. Smith.
Um, from our standpoint, you have to be able to talk with everybody. So in my mind, yeah, the majority of the time, particularly on frontline support, analyst support, you're going to probably be talking with a clinician, but you have to be able to have a personality to communicate. So
Yeah.
um, I can't think of one job, to be honest with you, Anthony, that I could honestly say you'd be able to just sit in a room and I don't know, kind of code all day or install all day, write reports all day and not have to talk to anybody. If you think about it, if you're writing reports, you need to know the users you're writing a report for if you're meeting their needs. If the network's down, you're probably going to be talking to somebody either at Cisco or some telecom company to articulate a problem. So you need to be able to talk and communicate. I can't think of one. I don't know. I'd be interested in Michael and Brian can think of one, but I can't think of one job that we have that you're not going to be talking to somebody.
Michael, do you have any folks hidden in the basement who don't have
Yeah, no, not anymore. But
No.
I think that, and that's part of the interview process too. Is just can they have a conversation? Do they have questions? Right? Have they put a little bit into it? Right?
Yeah.
And I agree. I think not that everybody's going to be an extrovert and be really chatty, but you need to be able to have a conversation. You need to be able to get to pertinent data. You need to be able to make a connection. And yeah, some users are much harder than others, but in the field, you never know who you're going to run into, right? Somebody calls the service desk, somebody comes in, or you're supporting an implementation. So I do think that that is something that we probably don't put enough emphasis on is the communication. And we chalk it up to, well, they're shy or they're this. Like, no, you have to be able to communicate. And we can help you with that. But once again, you have to be willing to just saying, hey, I don't like to talk to people is probably not a good starter.
Yeah, that's not going to bowl them over in the interview.
No.
You may have to be able to talk to somebody who's having a bad day on the other end
Yeah.
and help deal with that as well, articulate your problem or what they need.
Yeah.
All right, great. This is my favorite part. I want to hear what you folks would like to know from each other. So, Michael, I'm going to start with you. Do you have a question for one or both of your co-panelists?
Yeah, I'd ask Steve and Brian, how have you guys set up your job architectures, and how have you guys, how do you decide what to fund or invest in with your teams in terms of certifications?
Brian, why don't you go first?
So I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but from an architecture perspective, we went, it's been years ago now, and created different levels, like a 1, 2, and a 3. And so we have different requirements. So like when I talked about, in order to be fully remote, um, you have to be a 3 to be fully, it might be 2 or 3, but you can't be a 1 and be fully remote. So
Got
we
it.
have these ladders that relate to experience, certain levels of projects, certain certifications that allows them to work through. So it gives someone some upward mobility, even if they don't make a dramatic change into like a manager role or a senior engineer, things like that. So that's been really successful. And the other thing, I'm really open. I was highly technical back in the day, and um and had a number of certifications back when I was more hands-on. And so I'm a really big proponent of both education and certification. And if it's a core system that we use, we're totally open to certify. We'll pay, but I always say we'll pay for one test. So if you pass the first time, great. If you don't pass the first time, the second one's on your own. So it puts a little bit more skin in the game for the person. And I guess that's kind of how we've gone about that. And sometimes we have people that take us up on it, and sometimes we don't. And oftentimes, even if they don't, they're still highly skilled individuals. Just they're not as motivated on the certification side.
Okay.
Steve?
So, Michael, you're going to the Epic world. On the Epic side, they make it, they kind of tell you what you have to do there with regards to certification. So there, what we did is anybody that wanted to become an Epic analyst and would go, and we sent everybody away and paid for that. They actually signed a promissory note. We put a dollar amount on the education because we are advancing their career. And
Mhm.
basically, the gist of the note was so they stayed through the length of the project and a little past go live.
Yeah.
And then after they moved there. For what I'm going to call the everybody other than Epic team, so our infrastructure folks, our analysts and that, we pretty much took Brian's approach. We have a career level, a 1, 2, 3. On the tech side, we do pay for certs. On both sides, I do let them fail twice. So we give them 2 passes. Well, what we have found is really on both sides. If you haven't taken a test in a while, so if you're removed from a formal education, college or whatever, and you get into that, a lot of times you fail the first one because you are just plain nervous. I
Yeah.
mean, you're just amped up and sweaty. So, we kind of talk them through it and say, hey, look, man, you're going to get another pass at this. And I can't think. I mean, I got to believe we've probably tested in one way or another over 100 folks, and I can't think of anybody that has failed twice. So usually the second time around, and it's not, and really we have found out it's really just more fear,
Mhm.
Nerves. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's kind of what we do there.
That's a good point.
Great. Thank you both.
Excellent. All right, Brian, do you have a question for one or both of your co-panelists?
Yeah, so mine's fairly specific. So do either of your organizations implemented virtual nursing? If so, what type of units? And I may have other conversations offline.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we pre-Epic we did, and it didn't work out very well, so we pulled it back, and now we're looking at both a new platform. But what we found is the failure was it was a technology-led initiative, not a nursing-led initiative, and so now we're looking at the entire virtual care, our entire virtual care strategy to include virtual sitting, consults, and others. But yeah, it wasn't successful the first time around.
Interesting.
All right. All right, Steve.
And Brian, I would ditto Michael, except that we did not do it before Epic, but now that we have Epic in, we kind of have what we feel a platform to look at it. But I agree, the technology is a big piece of it, but you also have have to have the organization buy-in, culture of the organization accept that. So we're in the same boat. So I'm sorry, I wish I could tell you we have this robust virtual nursing program and here's how we did it, but we don't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well-
No, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I just made a note. Maybe do a story on virtual nursing, Brian, and I'll send you the link. when I get that done.
That's good.
But you know what Michael said right there is always a big best practice we hear is get the operations people like with you at the elbow right from the beginning, Michael. That's
Yeah. I
yeah,
think this is where the team, dating back a few years, got excited about the technology
yep.
and tried to push it uphill and just wasn't ready. But yeah, we're doing an RFP right now, looking at platforms with our nursing and clinical leadership. So it's a much different approach. I'm confident on the second time around. It's just going to take us a little time.
All right, very good. I want to have an audience question. I want to get to from our friend David Muntz. What kind of group activities do you use to inform, raise morale, and recognize your individual and group successes? Do you publish newsletters or annual reports for those same or similar purposes? Anybody? Any thoughts there?
I
So,
do a simple one. I'll just be, it's quick. Ever since I've been here with Faith Regional for 13 years, and we, buying like Christmas gifts and those things are always challenging to figure out what to do. So my wife and I, every year since we've been here, take the entire department out bowling, just as our gift to them, and invite their whole family. So we want to get to know their family. We know their family is a big part of the sacrifices they make to be part of our team. And so I know bowling sounds really simple, and but it's super fun. People enjoy it, even if they don't like bowling. They come out and they socialize. So that's been something I think that every year I ask if they still want to do it, and every year they still want to do it. So
And you don't have to worry about a rain delay. Steve?
yeah, yeah. So along the same lines, not only do we have our quarterly on-site meetings, but we always try to make sure we have a social aspect after it when we can, whether it's a pizza party, something like that. It's just a casual atmosphere. We always have the Christmas potluck where we try to shut everything down for a couple hours where we can. But we try to do things with an informal setting that usually involves some type of food. It's always got to have food,
Yeah.
but no agenda, no structure, things like that. So that we found that those to be the most effective, in addition to our regular communication with department meetings, things like that.
Michael?
Yeah, we do a every other week all staff meeting. We call it IT Access. We do every other Friday, where we go through kind of monthly operating review results. But we highlight all anybody's got a certification, we promotions, open positions. We talk. So that's kind of our avenue to talk about what's working well and growth and development and what's going on in operations throughout the organization. So we try to get together frequently, a couple times a year. We weren't successful in the past year with some of the projects going on, but we try to get together a couple times a year with the whole team in person.
All right, excellent. Steve, I think it's your turn. Do you have a question for one or both of your co-panelists?
Yeah, it really circles back to the first topic we talked about. Do either of you have, whether it's remote or hybrid, formal policies to cover that, or is it just something you say, okay, John Doe, you're Jane Doe, you can work from home, and so I'm interested in a formalization, if it's formal or just something you kind of do.
Yeah, I'll say ours is we have a policy that HR policy that covers it at a very high level. What we've been working on is our IT standards of what does it mean to be remote or work from home, and what are the community standards around that. So it's not formalized. We're trying to develop a process around it.
Brian?
yeah, ours is fairly formal. We have a kind of a set of documents that they have to go through. They have to certify certain things. One of the things that may or may not be called out in other policies is we say specifically, you need to have childcare. So you're not working from home and having to take care of.
Yeah.
Now it's different when you have older children, I guess. But so we call out things like that. Things like even things like listening devices. Please don't have a Amazon Echo in your home office. So ours is fairly, and they have to sign off and certify certain things and how they're going to prepare the environment, how they'll protect the environment. So be happy to share that with you if you wanted, Steve.
That'd be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
likewise.
Yeah, Steve, my brain goes to, it's just the way my mind works, goes to like the detail level. So when you had mentioned we have to be able to find you, right? You said your high level policies, if you're remote, we have to be able to find you. And I'm thinking, okay, so what does that mean practically speaking? Meaning I reached out to you and we're talking about an email. You didn't respond for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for half hour. we're not responding for 10 minutes is different than 3 hours, right? And if we're writing
Yeah.
a policy, we get into those details and we have to start putting on paper. So it gets really, as you mentioned, coverage from home. What is coverage from home? Is it a grandparent? Are they well? Are they laying
Yeah.
in the bed? They're not well. How much, so you get into a lot of weeds. So I would imagine HR would really, you'd want to have a good HR partner because you could probably get yourself in a bad place, right? If you try and formalize things that are inappropriate, um, just because you're trying to make sure people are working. But that is about what a tremendous conversation. That is about all we had time for today regarding continuing education. You can use the final slide in this deck if you want. We recorded this, and you'll get an email tomorrow when the on-demand recording is ready. If you want to work with us, sponsor an event, you can reach out to Nancy Wilcox from our team, and you can go to our website to register for upcoming panels. With that, I want to thank our tremendous panel, Michael Carr, Steve Stanic, and Brian Sterud. Fantastic, lots of fun, great stuff. I want to thank our audience for coming in and all that kind of stuff. So looking forward to the next one. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Take care, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care. Bye.